Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today's guest is Amy Budden, also known as the Loving Neurohacker and the creator of the Magic Nap. A former Hollywood editor turned hypnotherapist, Amy helps everyone from CEOs to royalty rewire their minds for healing, success, and joy. After her daughter's miraculous recovery sparked a deep dive into neuroscience and the power of belief, Amy developed a signature method that blends hypnosis, brainwave entertainment, and heart coherence. She's a self-described human antenna who brings intuition and science together to help clients rewrite limiting stories and consciously create their lives. Incubators, can you think of a more perfect guest? Welcome, Amy. I am so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
We have been talking for a while back and forth because we've been scheduling this on and on. We've been texting late at night sometimes, and I've been getting to know what you do. And you even did a little session with me, which was so beautiful, and sent me some recordings. And so I'm really excited to share everything that you do with the Intuition Incubator audience today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, one of the things obviously that's super interesting is that you were a film producer and you made this massive switch to, at the time, was kind of woo-woo whateverness, right? And you told me that you were actually working with Adam Sandler, that you two are good friends. So I don't know if he thinks you're a freak now, but but it was really a massive change. And I think what would be great is to hear the story about how you made that shift, why you made that shift. And I know, as I read in the intro, it really had to do with the illness of your daughter and what you learned and found out.
Yeah. So at the age of 2, my daughter had sort of this unspecified, we couldn't really figure it out, autoimmune condition where her lungs would fill with fluid. And it was really stressful because it would come on without warning. It was as if she had an allergic reaction, and she was on tons of medication. And it was very serious, like gravely serious at times. And at the time, I had been meditating. I'd started meditating to kind of regulate myself so that I could be present for her. She had an experience whereby, as I was guiding her through some visualization, she imagined that she had a fairy friend that painted her lungs clean. And after that experience, she started to heal very rapidly. Within about 30 days, she'd gained about 30% of her body weight. And we were, tapering off the medication. And of course, the doctor said, well, she's going to have this for the rest of her life. And she's now 17 and completely healthy. So I went on this quest to find out how the mind can heal the body. And I became very intensely interested in the neuroscience of it because I couldn't really reconcile what had happened. And then I started to get training. I created this technique based on my experience and my intuition with her. And I got trained as a clinical hypnotherapist. And then I found myself like MacGyvering together a chair in my garage and playing with frequency. And I met people along the way. I met my hypnosis mentor, Cheryl O'Neill, and then Dr. Michael Gallitzer. He's my medical mentor. And he worked with Dr. Emoto, and he taught me about frequency. And Don Estes, he was kind enough to let me sit in with him and ask him questions about frequency. And what I started to notice was I right out of the gate, I was full. My practice was full. And I think it was because people were curious and they knew me in the community. The moms knew me in the community, and they didn't, it was really out there 15 years ago, but they trusted me as a person because they saw me in the community with my children, and people started getting really unreal results, like really miraculous results. Some of the stories that I love, of course, are the remissions. But also I started to be known for getting results with fertility because, of course, a relaxed body is a great place for a baby. So over the past 15 years, I've learned so much from my clients, and on my app, all of those learnings are there. So I have about 29 different channels. I call them channels, where there's 1,100 recordings in total, and everything from managing cancer care to fertility, egg retrieval, so that you have your mind on your medical team, because when you have to go into the conventional medical system, it can be really daunting. And so it just gives my clients a way to manage all of it so that they feel like they have a tool, that they're in control, and that they become their own personal coach. And, oftentimes you might say that they activate their own placebo effect, right? Because they mitigate pain often. They don't have side effects for chemo. And it's been about 12 years now, and I am constantly surprised. Every week I get a new amazing story. And if you want
Yeah.
to read more of them, they're on my Instagram at Connect the Mind. There's hundreds of testimonials there. So,
Well, and I'll ask you some more of them today too, but I'm curious to know, just going back to your daughter at 2 years old, like what do you attribute that to? What do you attribute her having that vision and the miraculous recovery to?
well, now that I've studied with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I've learned a little bit more about quantum biology and the energetics as well. Something happened that I've become familiar with my clients, where there was an energetic connection and there was an energy that moved through me that felt like unconditional love. And oftentimes when my clients have those miracles happen where they have, they can't find the tumor on the scan anymore. They've just had this similar experience where it's like a blissful feeling and an energetic connection. And I felt it. It came through me and it came through her. And I just wanted to learn more because I knew that it was powerful and I didn't understand it. So I sought out, the science of Dr. Joe and
Have you been to events?
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, when were you at events? I didn't
I
know
was
that. We never talked about this.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to do a very small one at Quick Smala in, I think it was 2021. It
Okay.
was only 30 people. So
Yes.
because I'm a single mom, every time I would sign up, I would have to cancel because of mom duties. So I was supposed to go to,
Okay,
I was
okay.
supposed to go to one in Croatia, but yeah. So
Right.
yeah, so it was a small week long in at Quick Smala in Mexico.
Oh, nice.
It was
And that's that. Yeah, I don't know that we talked about that, but of course I've been to
fun.
bunches and used to be one of his corporate trainers, and my son works for him now. But
Yeah. Oh, I
I,
was going to mention something about the energetics. So when I had the feeling of energy, I
yeah.
realized I was drawn to heart math. So I
Mhm.
created the technique not knowing about heart math, but then the technique always incorporated coherence technique. And so I was so relieved and overjoyed to find heart math because it gave some credibility to what I was doing. And it gave me an understanding and the vocabulary with which to talk about it. That when you have these strong, positive feelings, you can cultivate these positive feelings. And then you get this neurochemical cascade of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And it mitigates the hormones of stress, which creates a healing environment, right? So it just, all the pieces started to come together. And now I have a much better understanding because of Dr. Joe's work and heart math and
Yeah,
coach
and
is
coherence. And that's exactly why I was asking, because when you were describing your 2 year old, and I'm thinking, well, this is energy because she's
right,
two, right? Like
right.
she's two,
Mhm.
and what you described, her feeling that this painting of lungs, I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Like, are you attributing this to like energy, like, which, and we talk about, I've interviewed a lot of different kinds of people on this podcast. And, some people are like, they really see entities, they see other energy, they see all
Mhm.
like all those things. But you're also really scientific, and a lot of what you're talking about is the science behind heart math and all that kind of stuff. And so that's fascinating. I mean, that's really what I wanted to know, because to me, it's all the same, right? But
Mhm.
some people, we really need to understand it scientifically to buy
Mhm.
it. Some people will buy the energy thing altogether. But with a 2 year old, I'm thinking, like, she doesn't understand what you're doing, or like, hey, how to slow your heart rate or whatever. She had this spontaneous thing run through her. And when you said it ran through you too,
Mhm.
How cool is that? And it really makes, like, do you work with a lot of young kids? Because it makes me think of like all the young children who, there are many, many that have issues. I mean, my son had, I have two that had serious medical conditions.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it almost seems like if you could do that with little kids, like, because we're going to talk about belief in a minute, but they don't have time to not believe anything. So it seems like
Exactly.
that would be incredible
Mhm.
results.
I actually work with the parents more so because they're more receptive to the parents. So I'll teach the parents basically how to teach their children to go into that alpha brainwave state, that, relaxed state of focus concentration, where they can begin to help them cultivate those beliefs. And so that's another thing that I did with my daughter is I would lie beside her at night and I would say, "You're healthy, you're strong."
Mm.
And yeah,
Oh,
she really did. I really did internalize it because she's just so resilient and joyful and healthy
that's
and strong.
amazing. And is this another specialty of yours, that people that have young children that are struggling, do they seek you out?
I work with mothers postpartum mostly.
Okay.
I have recordings for that, just for breastfeeding and the transition. But no, I haven't really done it specifically for children, which is surprising, right? Because that's my origin story. But
Well,
I'm
yeah, and it's
to
just
it
like,
all.
it's so amazing, right? Like, and you think about, I mean, I've had Susie Miller from the telepathy tapes and all, this outburst of autism, and
Yeah,
you just really wonder, like, if we could catch them at
yeah,
that age, like
yeah,
how powerful that would be, you
yeah.
know?
It would be so powerful, and just with the energetics that I have experienced and continue to experience, it's evolved so that because I've been working with frequency, now I can see and sense energy on and around the body. And when I connect with my clients, we kind of go to the hill. You know what I mean? We go to
Hmm.
another place where we're co-creating, and I believe that there are words and phrases that they need. So I asked permission before we began, but the words and phrases that they need come to me from their bioenergetics. And so that it's really a custom creation along many, many lines that I don't quite understand. But, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and then this energetic piece that happens where even if, it's something like neuroception where there's a quality to my voice that conveys care and concern to
Yeah.
their nervous system. It could be that simple, but I'm not quite sure what the secret sauce is, but there's definitely energetics that have evolved and intuition that's evolved, that I'm still learning about, where I can see and sense what they're seeing and sensing as they're in the journey. And I do believe it now because it's been confirmed so many times.
I know,
Just
because you were telling me when we were, yeah, when we were talking, you were like, because I was asking, about this belief thing. I can't remember what the conversation was, but you were like, yeah, I get so many testimonials and people that tell me what happened, and I'm still catch myself
Mhm.
in disbelief.
I do. I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the power of our conditioning, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And the other person who gives me the vocabulary to talk about this is Stephen Kotler, because he talks about flow states. But I do struggle with that. So often I'll say to my clients, is it all right if I tell you sometimes I get pictures in my mind and it doesn't need to mean anything? And I'll just sort of go into a light trance and then begin to tell them what I'm seeing. And of course, I only say what is positive or loving or uplifting. And oftentimes I'm tapping into something I couldn't possibly know,
Mm.
that it feels like to me there's a telepathy between hearts, or there's a telepathy that's happening between us where I get access. They grant me access to the right words and phrases and the energetics of something I don't quite understand, but feels very real to them and to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I guess one question that comes to mind is, speaking of heart coherence, and Roland is actually going to be on the show, or he will have already been on the show by the time this airs. But what happens? Like, do you do a little heart coherent session for yourself? Like, even while you and I were getting ready for this podcast,
Mhm.
your computer wasn't working and I just had an irritating thing. And, it was like, all right, we got to center ourselves here. And, you know, what happens? Like, you have to be so dialed in for those. What
Yeah.
happens if you just were ruffled right before you have an appointment?
Yeah, what's really interesting is I think because I've been a meditator for 20 years and because I've seen so many people, I basically spend my day in trance, in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that I sync to, an alpha brainwave state, or I am in coherence. So they, because it's
Yep.
catchy, right?
Yep.
Coherence is catchy. So they sense me and they go into coherence. And it's interesting. My friend, Dr. Kristen Willemeyer, she mapped the Long Island medium's brain on Dr. Oz, and she says she's going to map my brain so I understand it a little better. But I think that coherence is catchy, right? And even when I would do large groups, when I teach large groups, I would just watch it, go off
Yeah.
like dominoes in the room. And so I just use my practice to connect very deeply to a state of relaxation. And I believe that they feel it. There's an exchange of information and they're able to have that sense memory. I've never had anyone sit in the chair and not go into
Into
trance.
a trance.
Yeah.
Have you worked with anyone who struggles with their own belief in their ability to heal themselves and not be able to get past that? Or are you usually able to hypnotize them out of that?
Yeah. Well, it's not really me that's hypnotizing them. They are using the tools to reinforce their beliefs. So, have I ever had anyone, you know, what we were talking about, the programming is so powerful. I did have one client that they couldn't find the tumor on the scan, and the doctor said, "Oh, well, that's impossible. It's coming back."
Oh my God.
So I hear these stories every day.
Oh
So
my
then
God.
we have to go into deeper depths of surrender, really, to the
Mm,
outcome. That's the thing. Like wanting it to be a certain way, just surrender and
yeah.
staying in the feeling, just staying in the feeling of trust, of faith, of love, right? Wherever
Yeah.
they can get, that's not fear. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did, but it brought up another one.
Yeah.
um, you had sent me this link the other night to share with a friend of mine who's
Mhm.
has an issue with cancer, and I was watching. It was later, it was later here, so it was a live
Mhm.
stream, so I didn't get to see all of it, but it spoke to this issue that you just talked about with the medical system, and when doctors say those kinds of things, and all of those things. It's shocking to me. And I recently spent half a day with my friend at the oncologist, and was just shocked actually at the it was actually aggressive, the degree to which she was
Yeah.
annoyed that we would even bring up the ability to heal the body.
Yeah.
I mean, it was mind-boggling, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can hear like how frustrating that must be for you when it's like you do all this work with someone and they go to the doctor and it's like it's coming back. What? Why would you
It
say that?
it's it is frustrating. It is frustrating. However, their consistency and their repetition and their commitment to listening really can conquer it. And even to have that on their side when they're going into treatment, so that, like, for example, they don't give themselves time to doubt. So if they're getting chemotherapy or they're getting an infusion, that they just have it on a loop, that the recording is telling them that the infusion, they don't have any side effects, that the infusion is there to balance the body,
Hmm.
and to reinforce those beliefs. So it just makes me realize how much this is needed. And even, in my own limited experience, I had like a very routine surgery, and I just realized, like, we were all sort of wheeled to this cattle. It was like a cattle call afterwards, and you could hear people like moaning and vomiting. And, I just thought it would be so much better if you could just tell the nurse to put these headphones on someone and just
Yeah.
have them think, you're okay. Your body is healing. You don't know
Yeah.
that yet, but you're going to be okay. You're okay now. And just give them some kind of care
Yeah.
so that they're blocked from all of that negative stuff, and so that they can soothe their nervous system in any situation. And it's kind of like being able to go to the calm in the storm, right? You
Yeah.
have to be able to go to the calm in the storm, because life is going to keep coming at you. So it just gives you the ability with these recordings, whether it's the generic recordings on the app or a very specific one, you get to be the architect of what you believe. You get to be the architect of your health and well-being. And that's a powerful place to be when you're in a system that's telling you that you're sick, broken, your body doesn't work.
It's very hard to, I mean, I was even talking to my friend afterwards and it was like, gosh, like in the middle of that, like we forgot ourselves, we kind of
Right?
were like just going all in on what she was saying,
Right. Because
and
they're the experts.
they're the experts, right? No matter what listen, teach neuroscience, heart math certified, talk to people like you all the time, meditate, all the things. And I'm sitting in a doctor's office, almost a little frozen. It takes a minute. Yeah, hypnotized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Say more about surrender, because that was something that came out on that panel the other night that I just thought was really profound. Rev Beckwith was there talking, and we'll get to intuition because they mentioned intuition like 30 times. I was texting like, oh my God, but this idea of, they were talking about the cancer as a gift, and I actually have two separate questions, but talk more about surrender first. What's the impact of that, and what are we surrendering to?
Well, let's see. I see it both with cancer and fertility. So, and the connection to the intuition. Let's see. This is like a two-part question. Let's talk about surrender. It's a process. It's a process whereby the cancer journey seems to be a bit of a vision quest for a lot of people. In the sense that there's a peeling away of relationships that don't work, habits that don't work anymore. There's kind of this dissolving of self, really, previous self, and and they go into this sort of liminal space where they're reevaluating who they are, their relationships, everything.
Yeah.
And as they do that, that's when the healing begins, because they start to be very discerning about what is good for them and what they want and need, sometimes for the first time in their entire life. And, saying no to what isn't good for them. And it's a process of sort of strengthening their intuition and strengthening their ability to be very self-focused during the time of healing. And what ends up happening is they can, with the repetition, just like you've experienced with Dr. Joe's meditations, they can get to this place, and often they get to this place with the recordings where they feel that unconditional love, they feel that bliss, or they feel a really, really elevated, they have an elevated experience where they feel God. And it's in those moments that they realize like they can't control a lot of this stuff. And there's sort of this dissolution.
Yeah.
And they emerge. And when there's this surrender, they're not holding on to things, wanting things to be a certain way. There's the space for the healing to happen because they're letting go of the fear.
Yeah, they're letting go of the outcome. And I
That's
can see how that would happen with fertility as well, right? Like when you
yeah,
finally realize, like, ultimately, I don't have control over my journey. I don't get to
right,
say how the universe plays this out. Like, there's
right.
something greater than me that's working here. And, when you let go of that, all of a sudden there's a space open.
Yes. And
Yeah.
what I say to my clients in the very first session for fertility is, I know your baby's coming to you. I know it, because there's not one person who hasn't had a baby. Sometimes it's a surrogate, sometimes it's adoption.
Mm,
And then I ask them, can you let go of wanting it to be a certain way? Because usually, they start with the IUI and then there's IVF. And
right.
so we start with surrender on the first session, and then we work to it, just peeling away the layers,
Yeah.
till they can just be an acceptance of what is. And it's a process.
One of the things that I think really is foundationally at so much of everything is a worthiness program. And
Yeah.
when you mention, saying no and stuff like that, or when you have people that, want to make sure everybody's okay and all of these
Mhm.
things, it's this automatic program, right? Of I feel anxious when you're upset, so I'm going to overextend myself, which is not a conscious process, but it's an immediate, like the anxiety comes up, and before you know it, they're saying yes instead of no. And that's something that it seems like people are able to give lip service to, even, when they get sick and say, yep, I know I got to work on my worthiness.
Mhm.
But it's very hard to read the label from inside the jar, right? We can say that all while we just schedule dinner, agree to go over and do somebody else's, whatever, and, or grumbling about it or whatever it is. We like it completely just escapes us
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that is part of that issue about worthiness.
It is part of the issue of worthiness. And when people go into these flow states with the recordings, they have a broader perspective and they have more self awareness. So they're able to see and sense themselves in the world in a different way. So that's why it
Mm.
works. That's why it works.
So it's actually the actual doing of it
Mm-hmm.
that helps them to catch themselves
Yeah.
more.
Because you're going
Yeah,
into the prefrontal cortex, right? Like you're going into those higher
those higher
states of
centers.
awareness. Yeah. Yeah.
You talked earlier about like putting headphones on, like when people are getting infusions and relaxing the body. Share with us like what happens exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
we know that, you're getting into heart coherence and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening in the body as you are relaxing
Mm-hmm.
that's creating a space for healing?
Yeah. So essentially, when there's no hormones of stress like cortisol, your body goes into healing because it's not fighting anything. It goes into
Mm.
hyper healing. So if you do, you want to do like a quick 5-minute exercise, and then I
Heck
can explain
yeah.
what's
Yeah.
happening while
Let's
we do
do
it.
it. Yeah.
So you can just shut your eyes or keep them open. The people at home could shut their eyes and give yourself permission to let go of the thoughts of the day. So, one thing you can do is you can yawn 3 times, and that will send a signal to the nervous system that it's time to relax. And then, of course, you can extend the breath. You can lengthen the breath. You can breathe in, say, for 8 and hold it for 2, and then exhale for 10. Or if that's too long, just make sure that the exhale is longer than the inhale. And that's going to send another signal that it's time to relax. And so you can just begin to think of something really pleasant. Like I love to think about my kids when they were babies. That just gives me, that's my mental image. And notice what your image is that gives you this sense memory of safety and security, or love. Love is the drug, of course. And just give yourself permission for your heart to soften and open, to really feel how good things are and what is good. And so, what's happening now is you're lengthening the breath. You're letting the body know that it can disconnect from the day. You're going into this space where there is space. There's space to breathe. There's space to connect to yourself and your intuition. So as you're breathing, you might be noticing any tension or tightness. You can just give permission to let that go. And so each and every time you do a recording, one of the Magic Nap recordings, you're going to count down from 5 to 0. And this is just the repetition of this just lets you know that you can just drift into this place again that signals safety to your body, signals relaxation and rest to your body. So you can just count down, see those numbers counting you down at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And in the recording, we'll slowly go through the relaxation of the body. There you go. I can see that you're there. So just allow yourself to relax your body from head to toe. And notice how powerful you are to create this relaxation sensation. And we can play with this a little so the people at home will know that they're powerful. The body will follow your mind's direction. So just imagine that your eyelids are really, really heavy. And you're going to say to yourself, my eyelids are so heavy, so comfortably heavy. And then you can just double it. And then you can just triple it. My eyelids are so very heavy. And then you might say to yourself, they're so heavy, they feel comfortably stuck together. What if I could just create this sensation that my eyelids are so heavy and comfortably stuck together? And then you double that sensation and you triple that sensation. And you can stay here for as long as you like playing with this sensation in your eyelids. Good. And then when you really feel like using your imagination, you've really created this sensation that your eyelids are stuck together, you can test it. And you're going to notice it's really hard to open your eyes. And you're going to say to yourself before you test it, the harder I try to open them, the more difficult it becomes. The harder I try, the more difficult it becomes. They're so comfortably heavy. The harder I try to open them, the more difficult it becomes. You can just test it out as you're repeating that to yourself. And you probably won't want to open your eyelids. And of course, when you give yourself permission to open your eyelids, you can. And then we would just kind of give you a sense that all is well by allowing you to drop into your heart. So when you drop into your heart, begin to see and sense and feel maybe a memory or something that makes you feel so loved. Really feel this love in your heart, in your body. Really make it real with your inner eyes, with your inner ears, with any and all of your senses, and just feel how it's radiating from your heart. And what's happening right now is you're creating all those neurochemicals that are conducive to healing because you're safe, you're rested, you're creating that dopamine, that oxytocin, that serotonin, those endorphins. You're reducing the inflammation in your body by doing this. You're boosting your immune system. And you can just relax a little more and use your imagination to amplify the good feeling. And see if you have like an anchor, like if there's a visual anchor that you can use throughout the day, like when you're doing something tedious, like driving or going to the dry cleaner or whatever, that you can just bring up this feeling again. And as you bring up this feeling throughout the day with your eyes open, it becomes your natural state after a while. That it just is so comfortable to be in love and in love with yourself and your life, and uncomfortable to be in a contracted place, because you'll notice how expansive you feel when you allow yourself to feel this good feeling. So dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, And endorphins, you're dosing yourself and you're reducing inflammation, you're boosting your immune system just by going into these micro moments of rest. You give the body the time for its wisdom to unfold and for it to do its good work. And then at the end of the recordings, we have a count up so that you can also use your mind to bring an energy back with you. So let's just say you're bringing all of these good feelings back with you. Let's just say that you can imagine yourself fully energized, just like you could create the sensation in your eyelids. What you tell yourself, your body is hearing, is believing. So now you can tell yourself how you want to bring yourself back to the day. You can tell yourself that you're going to smile more, maybe laugh more, not take things so seriously, and bring all of this energy into the cells of your body and then back into your day as you count up from 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Welcome back. You're so fun because you're so used to going into meditation. I just watched you drop.
I know. I was afraid. Sometimes my pineal gland pops off and I like when pulled back. I'm like, oh, that doesn't happen. Oh my
so
God.
It's kind of a party trick, the eyelid thing. But
yes, I loved that. I've never done that.
It really shows you that your body's listening.
Yeah, because you can't open them.
You can't open them. Yeah.
I need to put a disclaimer on this episode at the beginning that people should not drive while they listen to this episode.
Probably.
Because I don't even know if I can continue interviewing you. That's how deep I went. You might have to lead from here. But yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So what was really fun is in the early days, I got to work with YPO. And so all these guys are like hard charging, and they come and they're like, I can't meditate. There's no way, you're going to be able to help me meditate. And then they're like,
and they just go out. Right.
But it was really interesting because it started to get around that people were more productive. So wasn't really my intention of working with high-powered people to get more productivity and to close bigger deals. But they'd say like, oh, I just closed this $30 million deal and you got to go see this lady because my productivity is way up. And then it was so interesting because I was seeing like studio heads and, everyone wanted the productivity tip. And what was really great was oftentimes there was a heart opening. So one of those people started connecting more with his family. And I happened to be at an event celebrating the remission of one of these people, and one of the children of one of the executives came up to me and said, oh, you made my daddy nice again.
Oh my God.
She was talking about when he coaches me in soccer, he doesn't get mad anymore. And she was talking about their connection.
Wow.
And so then I had all these male executives having these heart openings. And they're like, I really want to connect more. I want to communicate. So I called my friend Traver Bohm, who's amazing. And he works with men and he has this incredible, does incredible men's work, and it's called Man Uncivilized, and he works with men for heart-based leadership. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I have all these guys in the chair and they're like, they're feeling, they're crying. They don't know what to do about it. Like, how do I talk to men about this heart opening? So anyway, Traver advised on that. Yeah.
That's hysterical. Yeah. But it is really true, right? I mean, every great leader, every like super Amazon, Steve Jobs, these guys had a meditation, mindfulness practice, right?
And they all talked about their intuition. So every successful person that I worked with, even if they looked like they were so buttoned up and that, they were down for this, because they could immediately feel like whether it's they were picking the right script, right? That was going to be a hit, or they were visualizing and imagining the flow of how a deal was going to come about, or they were visualizing and imagining the best possible outcome. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it just worked.
Yeah. Speak more to that intuition. I want to talk about that because this state of being is what allows that intuition to come in. And why is that intuition important? And how does it allow it to come in?
Yeah.
And talk about that a little.
So we would talk about the resonance of a good decision. That's what we would talk about. And they would sit in the chair and we would do a yes no exercise. So it goes something like this, and we can do it right now. So if you're saying yes to yourself, like yes statements are like, you've got this, you positive things. And if you're just saying yes, like you can just say yes out loud right now.
Yes.
Like yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes.
You can feel it in your chest, right? Your body's listening.
Yeah. Yes.
Try saying no to yourself right now. Just no, no, no.
No, 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 no. Yeah. It feels
It feels
closing up.
tight, right?
Yeah.
And we all know what a no statement is. So we sort of talked about the resonance of a good decision. The resonance of a good decision is a yes, is a yes. So there's a feeling in the body. So I had them connect to what that was. And it really was, it changed their life because it changed their relationships. They weren't going to coffee with the complainer anymore. You know, that was a no.
Right.
Right? It changed everything, and it allowed them to constantly be evaluating what is essential, saying no to what isn't essential, and tapping into that resonance of a good decision. That's what we would call it. Because I had to use their language because intuition was a little too touchy-feely for them. It was the resonance of a good decision and evaluating what you can eliminate by tapping into the yes, no in the body.
I love that. The resonance of a good decision, because it's such a great way of saying that, because you have to pay attention, but if we paid attention, we know what it feels like. You just,
Exactly.
you can remember a decision and that was really good. And you can remember, and you can just feel it, just tap into each, energy center if you want, or just finding that hit. And how many times do we make decisions without doing that?
Exactly. And if you're moving through the day I would call it 3 E's. So if you're moving through the day and constantly evaluating a yes or a no, it changes your life. And that's what my clients with cancer do too. It's like, is this a yes or is this a no? If it's a no, I don't have the time or the bandwidth for a no anymore. Whether it's like the cup of coffee or, what I'm eating, who I'm surrounding myself with, what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
There is no space for no when you're really sick.
Yeah.
And so I try and break it down into structures and systems. And I was so lucky to work with YPO because they really taught me how to do that, how to create structures and systems and speak in a way that anyone could understand it. It didn't have to be wooey. And productivity could also have the side effects of heart opening and healing. And,
Right. I mean, and when you speak to productivity, I remember looking up a stat like years ago for a talk I was giving at a conference about meditation. And it was talking, and I was speaking specifically on productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I obviously talked a lot about meditation, and I can't remember the stat exactly, but it was something about like, if you meditate for 20 minutes a day, you can theoretically add like 9 more minutes onto every hour of your workday.
Yeah, because the 20 minutes that you meditate is the equivalent of 90 minutes of REM sleep. So we're essentially, we're in overwhelm so often, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is high beta, which looks like this all over the place. So when we slow that down and go into alpha and it's coherent and it looks like that, then it's like closing the tabs in our mental computer.
Right. And that's why, I mean, that's why when I'm on a jag where I'm meditating regularly, like, a couple hours at a time or whatever, I don't need nearly as much sleep.
No.
I mean, I can get by with really
Exactly.
not a lot of, and I used to be the kind of person that was like, no, I need my 9 hours, not even 7 or 8, but like I want it every hour.
Yeah. That's how I came to it because when my daughter was sick, I wasn't getting a lot of sleep and I wasn't all there, right? But when I would meditate, I had the ability to get very little sleep and I felt rested and I felt clear. And so really all those years ago with her, 15 years ago, she taught me how to be the calm in the storm in whatever situation. And then I was able to practice it with my clients every day. So now it's very easy for me to be that way in my life.
This is such a great conversation because there are so many business people that are so overwhelmed. I mean, not just business people, but what I'm hearing you say in terms of productivity is really two pronged. I mean, we just discussed this thing about being able to literally have more time in your day because you're more rested. So you literally have more time. But what you were speaking to before that has to do with this piece of intuition, which is written about in the emissary, the master and his emissary. You know, the right brain processes 800 times faster than the left. Because if you're not thinking about the right thing to do, you're just dropping into a knowing of the right thing to do. Imagine how much time you're saving. And that, like, you don't have to have 10 meetings to figure out how to handle this account or this case.
Exactly.
Because you know.
And if you're consciously creating from the minute that you wake up in the morning, if you're listening to a recording that's helping you set up that discernment, you're really productive because you're not saying yes to anything that's a no. So,
right. And then you don't have to deal with the resistance that comes up with that and the emotions and all of the things. I don't know how I'm going to wait until your app comes out to air this episode because I feel like everybody needs to hear it right now.
Yay.
That's amazing.
What I've learned is that the magic is really in allowing yourself to feel the, as Dr. Joe said, these elevated emotions. That's the magic. And so I remember in the early days, I would insist people visualize a certain way. But what I've come to realize is it's really just the consistency. It's allowing yourself to rest, just allowing those words to go in. It's really not complicated, allowing the frequency to do its work, to drop you into that alpha state, and to just trust that you are healing, you are getting the relief, or you are getting the benefit, that the power of belief is going in. And people will say to me like, well, I sometimes fall asleep when I listen. And it's like, okay, that's okay. It's still working. And what I've realized is, it works. You don't have to effort it. And the more you don't effort it, the better. The more you just listen and not, think about it too much.
I think, and it's so funny because of course when I lost my train of thought, you picked up exactly where my train of thought was before I lost it, which was this question exactly of the efforting that we go through. And I remember when I very first started going to Dispenza events, and then eventually I was volunteering at them and talking to so many people who it was their first times or second or third times or whatever. And that was such a big part of it, the efforting, the trying. And it takes some time to realize, no, it's like actually the less you try, the better it is. And when people are starting out on this work on meditating, right? There's passive meditation and active meditation.
Right.
Can you speak to that? Because I know that some people might be listening, I have a very varied audience, but some people listen that really don't do any of this at all. And they may have an experience with sitting in meditation and just watching their mind think. And it's frustrating. It doesn't feel like it gets them anywhere.
Yeah. So passive and active meditation, I'm not really sure. I'm wondering, I don't know if my recordings are passive or active. It depends.
Well, I feel, and I'm not an expert on it, but my understanding, and I could be, intuiting this wrong, but to me, like passive meditation feels like when you're just sitting there watching your thoughts, but active meditation is actively moving your brainwave states down, getting into heart coherence, and not just thinking your emotions. But feeling your emotions. And so to me, I feel like what you're doing it is active. It is the act of meditating.
Yeah, it is active. And it also has a purpose, usually a therapeutic purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember when I used to teach, there was some talk that I wasn't really teaching meditation because it wasn't passive, that it was like
Hmm.
forcing the issue kind of. There was
Right.
some opinion about that. But it is active, and the beauty of it is that you are the architect of what you want to think, believe, and feel. And you are the architect. When my clients work with me privately, I take their words and phrases. I take
Right.
their beliefs that they want to. So they become the architect of their subconscious in a way, right?
Yeah.
And, all those things that maybe have been loops since we were really little, I've just watched people with their own awareness come into the office and, I'll say, how do you want to feel? What do you want to think? And when they hear over and over and over, and they take themselves to a place of empowerment or health or, well-being, it works, and they have an active tool to participate. So I don't have that much experience with passive meditation because, like, honestly, I would suck as a meditator if I didn't have all the bells and whistles. I'm so ADD, and I still have that monkey mind even after 20 years of meditating. And that's also, I think, why I created it this way, so that people who really have a hard time can just press play and then they can
Yeah.
go. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I
Because when I,
people have issue with that too. Like, I use technology, but I use it in a way that I think really facilitates that brainwave state for everybody. So I'm not Amish, and I'm
no, I mean,
not
the
a
tech,
passive meditator.
yeah, I mean, and I think that, and I may have a misunderstanding of passive. I don't know, but to me, like the magic is in being able to slow that brainwave state and and that means that you're not just sitting there watching your thoughts.
Hmm.
And I think the technology is so important in that because it is
Hmm.
so hard. And I mean, I've talked to a lot of people about this. I had Eben Alexander on who was talking about it as well. And like it's very difficult sometimes when you're new to meditating to
Hmm.
slow your brain down. And so having, technology and resonance and sound and voice and, your calming voice or whatever is really, really important. It can make the difference. And then you kind of learn. Your
Hmm.
body remembers how to drop in. So now you're dropping in sooner and sooner and sooner, right? Like you were saying, you can drop in, like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's, portable, so they can take it wherever they need to take it.
Right. So this is your app. This is your new app that's coming out. And I've been privileged to be able to be a beta tester,
Yay.
which was so kind of you to extend that. I've absolutely loved it.
Oh,
And
good.
so talk a little bit about that. So when your individual work, you are working with people, and then as you're walking them through it, you're making a recording directly for them that
Mhm.
they then go and listen to how many times a day after that?
Usually once or twice, at least 20 minutes. That's sort of the magic number to get results. But some of the longtime meditators can get results in as little as 12 minutes, I've noticed. Anyway,
Over
that's
how
just
many days? Over how long?
I would say that my clients notice a difference in their sleep and their
Mhm.
reactivity within 30 days, generally.
Okay.
Um, and then it just keeps getting better and better. It just keeps getting
Yeah.
better.
And so what inspired you to do the app? What and
So basically, I realized that I had a ton of content, and I realized that I had learned so much from my clients. If I could encapsulate their experience and their learning going through fertility, or what the dominant themes were for them, if I could offer that to someone else instantly, that would
Yeah.
be so helpful. I mean, what I've learned about cancer treatment, and what I've learned about fertility treatment and what the obstacles are, and of course, like, fears and phobias, I have that channel. So I just learned so much from my clients, and I just thought it would just be so wonderful for people to have access to that wisdom at the beginning of their journey. and to be able to pick and choose what they needed when they needed it. So if they're going into egg retrieval, for example, they would listen to the recording that would keep them basically signal to their body what's happening, and they would have the conversation with their body. Or if they're going into chemo, they might listen to the recording called Shrinking Elixir, so that they have that tool. So
Mm-hmm.
it was born and I didn't realize how complex it was going to be. It was just born out of the desire to give people those tools on a broader level. I had seen so many people and I had learned so much. So I re-recorded everything and then remixed it. And because I was an editor, I actually
Oh,
had
right.
skills to do so. But what I didn't anticipate was how difficult it would be to do an app. So after compiling this huge library, I realized I had 1,100 tracks. And so then I broke it down by themes. Yeah. So I'm just excited to get it into hospitals, hopefully. I know I do work with doctors and oncologists, and I'm in talks with some fertility centers, but it just helps people manage their anxiety and puts them back in the driver's seat when they're having challenges. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's such the opposite of what we think we need to do, right? Like we just tend to beat ourselves. Like, I need to be this. I need to let go of anger. I need to let go of fear. I need to do da da da. And I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and he was, oh, and I had this conversation, and it frustrated me, but I just said, I need to let that go. It's not my business, and so I let it go, and I said, I don't think you've let it go. And then we're talking about, he's like, oh, yes. I'm like, it's in your body. You didn't
Yeah.
go anywhere. You can't
Yeah.
talk yourself out of your thought with your thought. The
Mhm.
mind doesn't do that. It's got to, right? And so we spend so much time kind of on this hamster wheel. And what you're offering is just this really simple, that feels very passive. All you got to do is put it on your ears.
Exactly. Yeah. And also it blocks out the environment, right? So if they're in the fertility center or if they're going into the doctor's office, they can use it for that anxiety so that they stay in the driver's seat so they don't get hypnotized, like you were talking about, by the
Right.
expert. So
Right.
oftentimes I'll give them tools so that they're blocked. I'll say like blocked from negative inference or negative
Yeah.
stories. And I reinforce that just like a paper cut heals, and sometimes we can't see it until, maybe it's really annoying in the morning, but then at night it's completely healed. I give them sort of certain words and phrases to reinforce that healing is naturally happening in the body. And that just mitigates some of the fear. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm so grateful to have been on these journeys with my clients who have taught me so much that it just feels like a gift to be able to distill their wisdom from going through all these transitions that they've gone through and just offer that to whoever needs it because
Because they've been
they
able to tell you, this is what worked for me. This is what changed.
yeah, and this is what I need to hear right now. I need to
Yeah.
hear this right now. And
Yeah.
it's pretty universal. It's the same themes. It's the same themes from all my different clients, depending whether it's fears or phobias, whether it's childbirth, whether it's postpartum. Yeah, it's just they have the wisdom and they have the right words and phrases. And it allows me to give that to people while they're going through their journey.
It all just sounds so divinely, intuitively guided.
Definitely. I do not push back anymore. I think I told you the story about the ring.
Yeah. Literally, I was just thinking about it. Go ahead. Tell the story.
So, just as my daughter was getting sick, I had been doing a lot of breath work and meditation. And I remember saying to one of my teachers at the time, I just feel like my life is moving in a direction that I don't understand. And it's just kind of slipping through my fingers. And I happened to be on location in Massachusetts on a Sandler film. And my daughter was really, really little and sick. Anyway, I lost my wedding ring. And there had been terrible rains. So these torrential rains. And I couldn't find my ring. And so about 3 days later, I surrendered and I just said, okay, I've lost my ring. I'm not going to look for it anymore. I'm just going to forgive myself that I've lost my ring. So I had my daughter who had an ear infection and was starting to get really sick on my hip, and my 4-year-old older daughter, and she was talking a mile a minute, like, what do you think? Do you think clouds have a color? You know, when kids are like that.
Yeah.
And then my Addie, my younger daughter, was screaming in my ear, like screaming. It was complete chaos. And I was walking down the street and I heard a man's voice in my head, not my voice, that said, look down. And I looked down and my wedding ring was under the wheel of a car. And I started to shake from head to toe because it was nowhere near where I had been because of the storms. So the storms had taken my ring. It didn't go down a drain.
Yeah.
And I picked it up and it had been run over many times. And my 4-year-old said, oh, Mom, do you believe in angels? And I started shaking and I hit the ground like to my knees. And I was just so rattled because I went through all the machinations, like, whose voice was that? How did I know it was here? How is it here? Is it really here? Am I looking at the ring? Anyway, I never had it buffed out because I wanted to remember the miracle of it, that it had been run over many times and that it was in my hands. So the first part of the intuition message was, look down. And then as I was shaking on the ground and my kids were like, Mom, I can't believe, do you believe in angels? I heard, now do you believe? You have to have faith. I still was fighting it. But what happened after was I was in meditation and I downloaded the name for my company, which was Connect the Mind. And I bought it immediately. I didn't understand it. And then I signed up for hypnotherapy at HMI, and I got the giggles so many times because it just felt it just felt so crazy that I was driving to the valley and it was very like pendulum swingy, like I love HMI. They were so good to me. It just felt like a comedy to me. Like I couldn't figure out like what was happening. And I just kept following it. And I've got many stories like that ring story now. And I believe it now. But still I struggle sometimes.
Well, because it's so amazing what you're doing. So tell us, I always ask people, if you could impart one piece of wisdom with the audience, if there was one thing that you just want people to know more than anything, what is that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. We are more powerful than we can imagine. And I believe that the heart, love, is a portal for possibility. And that we are capable of knowing things that we couldn't possibly know and connecting in ways that feel magical, but really are just another language that we're learning. And that connecting in deep meditation is a way to learn the language of healing the body or healing the emotions. That would be my wisdom, that you have the power to create what you want to create.
Oh, I love it.
It might not look like you think it's going to look.
Yeah, right. It might not look the same way. Right. Because honestly, when you say that too, I'm thinking, it might not look the way you think it's going to look, particularly with cancer patients. There's a lot of people that they don't want to do anything on the Western side, but you work a lot with the Western side, right?
Yeah.
You're not just saying you can do it all on your own, although you could. I mean, theoretically we can, and some people do, but that's not your message.
That's not my message. I meet them where they are. And so if they're doing conventional treatment, then we reinforce the belief in the conventional treatment. And we reinforce the belief that we can mitigate side effects and all that good stuff. And we activate their placebo on their terms, in their language, with their belief system. Yeah. I really like working with doctors because they're tired too, you know. The
Yeah.
doctors need some support, and they want emotional support for their patients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
And
Thank you.
they know that oftentimes know the limitations of the system.
They
So,
know their limitations. Yeah. Right.
mhm. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
It
This
was
was
a pleasure.
fabulous.
It was a
Yeah.
pleasure. And I know we'll be in contact.